Okay.
Okay, so that's my story. And as I said, my name is Leela Andrea Chaudhary, and I've been a practicing coach for some time. In my practice, I often seen my coaches and sometimes even senior leaders struggling with expressions in languages other than they grew up with. Because most of us think in our mother tongue and then translate into language of coaching. And coaching, as we all know, is a practice that explores even deeper recesses of being and beliefs. I have apprehensions that this language dilemma interferes with effectiveness with at least some people. Then there were issues of differing cultural expressions. I found that this was the feeling of my colleagues too. So we decided to get together, and here we are. Let me share some of our assumptions. Asia, as we all know, is one of the largest continents in the world. With 30% of landmass, 60% of the world's population, 48 countries, 2,300 languages, some of the world's most spoken and understood, some of the longest surviving civilizations, and needless to mention, a storehouse of wisdom. We are proud to be a part of the continent and inheritors of this rich tapestry of languages and culture. What do language and culture have to do with what we do? As you would have known, Russian psychologist Lev Vygotsky said language and culture are the frameworks through which humans experience, communicate, and understand their reality. What implications does it have for coaching? Well, there are questions that we are also puzzled and looking for answers. Is there language of coaching? Is it culture neutral? If it is not culture neutral, can it be language neutral? How to align coaching with local language and cultural context. We are blessed to have very distinguished speakers for this session today. Francois Cousin from Thailand, Swan from Singapore, and Debasis Chatterjee from India. This webinar will be moderated by Mr. Bimal Rath. Speakers' deliberations and inputs from other distinguished panelists and audience will really help us to resolve how do we broad base to offer our services in a language and context that a coachee understands best. Let me also share why we are setting up this organization. We intend to create a place for coaches, mentors, where they would be seen, heard, learn, and grow. Make it a meeting place for clients and coaches, mentors, and other helping professionals. Over the time, we also intend to create an alternative model to bring it in a better alignment with Eastern ethos, culture, and constructs, and create contents in regional languages. So here we are, our founder members, headed by our chairman, Dr. Viren Pratap Singh, and managing partners, Rajan Sinha, Amal Kumar Das. Incidentally, it's his birthday as well today. So Shweta Prasad and myself. Now, in order to get sage advice, we have requested some very eminent people who have been really kind enough to advise us through. So we have Swan from Singapore, Francois Cousin from Thailand, Rajiv Dubey from India, Anjan Bhaumik from Hong Kong, Bimal Rath from India, Gurvinder Pan from Oman, Professor Moinuddin Chaudhary from Bangladesh, Dr. Keith D'Souza from India, Dr. Rajesh Chandwani from India, and our executive council has Dr. Anil Vajpayee from India, Dr. Gautam Sengupta from India again, and Dr. Rani Desai, India. So this is Asia Coaching Network for you. Welcome everyone in our journey for transforming lives one at a time. To learn more, may I invite you to visit our website, which is www.asiacoachingnetwork.com today. Now, may I also request our attendees here to write on our chat box, where are you joining for this session today? Before we begin our session, here's a bit of housekeeping rule for you. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the Q&A box. Mr. Rath, who is moderating for our session today, will bring them up during the presentation. And we will also have time for questions at the end. Now, without further ado, we will turn the session over to Mr. Bimal Rath, who is also a part of our advisory board here at Asia Coaching Network. Bimal is an entrepreneur, author, and a student of leadership. He loves uncovering potential in people in all his endeavors. A lover of history, mystery, fiction, and travel, he engages with a wide variety of individuals, teams, and companies in the work that he does. He worked across senior corporate roles in his previous avatars, now focuses on ventures in the people and talent development space. Please welcome Mr. Vimal Rath, and he shall be introducing you all to our esteemed panel speakers for our session today. Over to you, Vimal sir.
Thank you, Leela. Thank you, ACN, for inviting me to moderate this session. It's a pleasure being here and with my co-panelists, so to say, who are eminent personalities. All of you know them. And before I set the context a little, in addition to what Leela already said, just a little bit of sort of practical stuff before I introduce our eminent guests. Roughly, we've got about 55 minutes. I'm going to request all the three panelists to sort of speak for about, let's say between 8 and 9 minutes each and share their views on the topic, which is recalibrating and reimagining coaching models. And I think Leela gave a very interesting cultural and I would say almost anthropological background to it, saying, why there is a necessity for sort of recalibrating and reimagining some of the coaching models, which have over time perhaps become a little standardized. And each of us, of course, bring our own perspectives to it. So in terms of the admin stuff, about 8 to 9 minutes each speaker. And then we will open it up, as Leela already said. Please type in your questions or comments in the chat box, and I will try and sort of ask them to either specific individuals on the panel or to the panel in general to answer. And based on the discussion, the views of the three panelists, of course, each one of you may also have other views which you may want to share in addition to questions, etc. So let me just quickly introduce the three panelists, and I'm going to go just for a change in the reverse alphabetical order, and we'll go in exactly the reverse alphabetical order in terms of getting the panelists to share as well. This is just for a change because the last 5 seminars I've attended all tend to go off in the alphabetical order, so I thought let's have a little bit of a change on a Wednesday evening, right? So Ross Swan, Ross, and very, very eminent personality in the coaching world, particularly in Asia. So he likes to describe himself as a perceptive, responsive, and highly accessible executive coach for over 20 years now. He's very well noted for his proactive style, and he dovetails individual leadership with corporate culture. He's had very, very wide global experience, from a corporate perspective and in consulting, and spans across industries as wide as manufacturing, hospitality, insurance, beauty products, and many other industries as well. So I think one of the things Ross sort of focuses on is a special challenge, as he puts it, coaching around cross-cultural issues. And we would be very interested in, as he speaks about this topic and shares his views, what have been his experiences, views, and insights around this whole cross-cultural area as it relates to today's topic. He's been working from Singapore for a very long time and has great insight into Asian cultures. And again, not just Asian cultures, but issues which span multicultural sort of dimensions. We would be very, very interested in hearing off from Ross, apart from other insights he may have. Our second panelist for the day is Jean-Francois Cousin, if that's how he pronounces, if I've got that right. Jean became an executive coach in 2006, actually. So it's almost been about 15 odd years. And he did that after he spent a lot of time with a Fortune 500 company in the executive leadership and management. Roughly, as we speak, or when I say by August, and which is, let's take 31st August as a cutoff, he's actually clocked over 13,000 coaching hours, served over 1,000 executives, and worked across 35 countries and 5 continents. And I think that is again, I think great in the sense that I'm sure from Jean we'll hear about a very wide set of views, insights, and perspectives as he's traveled across the world. So one of the other things about Jean is that he was a director on the global board of ICF. Many of you already know that, and I got a couple of messages yesterday on LinkedIn saying, is this the same person who was sort of also the chairman. So he was also the chairman in 2019 for the ICF Global Board. So Jean, welcome. And we would also like to hear, if I may say so, a little bit from your book, if you point that out. You've written this book called Game Changers at the Circus, how leaders can unleash greatness in their organizations. And I'm sure, again, I got a couple of LinkedIn requests yesterday saying, is he going to share things from the book? So I don't know whether you're going to do that, but it'll be interesting to see if you have any insights to share from that. Finally, I may introduce our third panelist, Professor Debasis Chatterjee. So Professor Debasis Chatterjee, of course, is well known in the Indian education circuit. He's been at multiple Indian Institutes of Management, including Calcutta, and he's currently at Kozhikode as the director of the IIM at Kozhikode. One of the things we know him for is that I think he's one of the rare people who got awarded the Fulbright Fellowship twice, actually, both in his pre-doctoral work as well as in his postdoctoral sort of work which he did with the Kennedy School of Government at Harvard University. And I think that that also has, in a way, I guess, pushed him towards the whole academic career apart from other things he does. So he's also been an independent director and has a sort of, if you will, a top-level view of several boards, Indian and multinational companies. And one of the things I think he takes a fair amount of pride in, if I may, among other things, is that he's coached over 30,000 managers and 25,000 school principals over the last 30 plus sort of years of his career. So Ross, Jean-Francois, and Debasis, very, very welcome to this panel. We'll go, as I said, in the reverse alphabetical order. So we'll go with Ross first, then Jean, you, and then Professor Debasis. If you can restrict yourself to about 8 or 9 minutes in the opening address, because we will, I'm sure, have lots of questions and views coming in from the audience. So Ross, over to you, please.
Ross, you might have to unmute yourself.
Good point. I've been having technical trouble, so I will apologise. My back screen didn't work tonight. Nothing's working. But anyway, look, I'm just saying thank you, Bamil. It's a pleasure to be here with the this new coaching network. And I was quite pleased when Rajan asked me to be on the advisory board and participate tonight. So I won't waste time thinking everyone.
Your sound has gone, Ross.
Maybe, as I said, there's been some technical issues tonight. I'll put my speaker.
Sorry, Ross, we can't hear you still. So if you just see how
You still can't hear me. Well,
yes,
now
we can. Now we can. Yes.
Now we can. Good. Yes, so there's been some problems with my internet tonight as well. So look, it's a pleasure to be here tonight, and now that I've wasted a couple of minutes, I better get straight into it. So when we're talking about coaching across cultures and differing models, I noted there's a comment made about the models being a bit bland, and I guess they're pretty similar, and they're structured. And that's probably why they're there, is to keep a structure in the coaching process. But the point I want to make is that sometimes we lean on the models rather than what we should be doing, that is leaning on the connection with the person. Now, for example, I mean, I just pick a coaching model I probably use, but it's only in the back of my mind, what they call the CLEAR method. Now, there's quite a lot of them, the GROW method, the CLEAR method. Then the CLEAR is C for connecting. L is for listening and questioning, right? Exploring, action, then review. But they all do similar things. And to me, it's not about being focused on what model you're doing. It's about focusing on what suits you, but more importantly, how do I connect with this person? Because the connection is paramount with any coaching. Even if there wasn't a structure, you'll get there if you have the right intent and you're connected with that person, with empathy, etc., then you can help that person. It's also, we looked at, so that's my first point there. And I'll give you an example of that. was talking to a client recently and just having a bit of a chat. Well, he's not a client yet, but he is about to be. This is in his former corporate life in his company he used to work for in Europe. He's reasonably high up in the pecking order of the management. But he was saying to me the company in their wisdom decided to have a coaching firm, or 1 or 2, 3, 4 coaches that were assigned to different people, and they'll be coached. And he said, I met this person, and he said, I can tell you, he was so interested in the structure of the coaching. You could see that he'd learnt the questions he needed to be asking. He'd predetermined what he was going to do. And that may be off the back of the person he spoke to previously, but he said, we were given an hour. I gave him 30 minutes and I dismissed him. I said, I cannot connect with a person who's not interested in me. They're interested in the process. So that's just one example of what can happen, right? So I just wanted to make a point of it. It's the connection is the key. Now, when we're talking about across cultures, one of the challenges there is the language, obviously, and that's one of the challenges I have, being with a broad Australian accent, trying to connect. And I struggle to connect sometimes with some of the English-speaking countries, let alone everyone else who doesn't speak English as their first language. But the key is if you want to connect and develop an empathy for a person, we emotionally connect. Doesn't matter where we are in the world, we connect emotionally the same. All the language does and the culture does is give you the context by which you can connect emotionally. So that's the first thing. Don't get head up with I don't speak this language so well and be focusing on the language. Focus on connecting emotionally, because we emotionally react anywhere in the world. We react to the same things. So that's the point I want to make there. And actually, I've found that when connecting with someone whose language, let's say we're challenged in our communication, I actually found it, whilst it gave me a headache in the concentration, I actually found the connection often was more powerful, because you're so focused on key words and reading body language to overcome the word language difficulty. I actually found I connect a bit more deeper with them. And matter of fact, I have more challenges with Australians than I do with people from other countries. And it's because you just sort of connect and communicate without that intensity of trying to work it through. But there again, I say, it's not working through the process, it's working through the connection. And I just want to give you with one example, leave you with one example with that. Because to me, it's connecting with the person's emotional self, their inner self. The words connect with their head. You need to connect emotionally with them, with their inner self. That's how you can relate. And emotionally, we're the same anywhere in the world. And that's the key. Just to give you an idea of what I mean by connecting with a person's inner self. I was coaching an executive who was known as being a bit, what you say, grumpy and a bit arrogant in his attitude and the way he dealt with people. So therefore, he was dealing in his headspace. He's always comparing, contrasting with the other executives. He wanted to be seen to be not an easy pushover. He wanted to be this. He wanted to do that, all in his head. And so one day I heard that he had berated one of his junior managers in front of everyone, etc. And that's for the prime reason, I would imagine at that time, just to show everyone that he can't be taken advantage of and he's no fool and you just got to listen to me, type power play. So when I had my session with him the next day, and I was allotted him because he was a challenge, and he actually didn't know it, but he was on a very thin line with the organisation. But the simple thing, how do you connect with him emotionally when he operates in his head in the political game of politics, of management, in corporate life sometimes? So when he told me what he was doing and how he wanted to show an example and how that person he felt was not, well, was ignoring him, etc. And it wasn't the case, I might add. So once he imploded all these words and said what he had to do, I asked him one simple question. I said, now, you know, he's got a 3-year-old son and he just had a daughter who was just born. So you just picture him going home this evening. He opens the door, he walks in, his little boy, I can't remember his name, I did know it, comes running up to him, grabs him by the leg and says, how are you, Daddy? Did you have fun at work today? And then I just shut up. Nothing was said. And for about 30 seconds, it felt like 20 minutes. For 30 seconds, he thought about it. Then he said to me, yeah, it was a bit hard, wasn't I? See, that's the connection emotionally. He was now emotionally connecting with that person and actually showing some empathy. Prior to that, he wasn't. And I just want to finish with this point, is it doesn't matter where you are culturally around the world, you'll still react to that story. It may be more challenging to say it in a different language, but people do get it. But emotionally, then you connect. And that's the key. Because once I got him emotionally there, we're able to really make some progress. But before then, it was a lot more difficult. So all I end with is, yes, it's harder to connect with language-wise and be aware of the context across the globe, but just connect heart to heart, and it does become a lot easier. Thank you, guys. Pleasure to speak.
Thank you, Ross, and thank you for being very mindful of the time. Very disciplined, I must say. So, we will come back to you. I'm sure there will be questions, and we'll come back to you for additional views. But Jean, can I request you and to share your views? And then we'll go to Debasis after that.
With pleasure. Thanks very much, Bimal and Leela, for your kind introduction. And thanks, Ross, for your enlightening comments that so profoundly resonate with me. And it's a pleasure to be with you all. Thanks, everyone, for joining from even as far as Mexico. So what a joy. And what an important thing we're celebrating today. Thanks, ACM team, for your kind invitation. Today, I would like to share a few thoughts about coaching as a catalyst and a timely one for liberation and reinvention across context, languages, and cultures. And I'd love to start with saying that at this point in time and in the history of humanity, we are at many levels in some darkness and on the path to greater light, and also on the joyous path towards that beautiful Indian time of Diwali that I dearly love, right? And we are progressing forward somewhat painfully in a complex world without an obvious better way forward, if there was ever one, right? And it's really difficult to figure it out because the same old stories are being reinforced in our minds, in particular by social media at the moment. In that context, the job descriptions of coaches and leaders have just gotten a lot more challenging. Now, as coaches or leaders, we've got to have a global mindset and we've got to trigger energy in people and in ourselves in the first place. We've got to catalyze collective intelligence because no one is smart alone to figure out the best way forward. It's not enough, though. We also have to enable disruptive creativity and of course, agility. And that's a very tall order. And I would say that when we think of it, right, the old thinking that brought us where we are and our lot with brought us our lot of crisis will not help us get on a better path. The same thinking that we used before will bring the same results as Einstein somewhat described is insanity, right? So this is a time really and a chance for us as humanity to reinvent ourselves, our way of being, our way of relating with others and with the planet. And if you don't take my word for it, then perhaps you can consider McKinsey's word for it, who, after having spoken about reimagination for a year and a half, recently came up with the word reinvention, as they try and figure out what will be the art of corporate reinvention post-crisis. Therein, I believe, we as coaches have a great role to play, and leaders all alike. And that's why I thought I'd love to connect us all, as I'm starting tonight or today, with the essence of coaching. And I invite you to watch an extract from the movie Ray, about that talented Ray Charles, jazzman, right? The movie excerpt shows him at 7 years of age when he was losing eyesight. So he was coming into darkness, in fact. And I'd love to invite you to pay particular attention to his mother's choice of attitude with him, and in particular, also focus on the energy and emotional state of the lovely little kid as he's going through the next 2 minutes of his life. And then perhaps you'll figure out why, to me, this may be the very best coaching session ever. Here we go. And she can be not only happy by the phenomenal gain in autonomy of her little boy in the span of 2 minutes, right? But she can also be very proud of herself for resisting the temptation to hold the little boy's hand, therefore keeping him dependent on her, and instead embracing absolute presence, trust that the little boy can reinvent his new way of being as he loses vision, right, and has to navigate in the dark and find some new light. And that's the work we do in coaching. And I resonate totally with what Ross was saying about the importance of emotional connection at the deep level. And I would also invite everyone as a coach to focus on the energy, because you see, energy doesn't lie. The language can lie, but energy doesn't lie, right? So it's absolutely your ally, and it's great to monitor the energetic state of your coaches and make sense with them about it. And that can help them progress a lot. I would also like to honor one of our Asian philosophers from a long time ago, Lao Tzu, who was absolutely a coach so long ago, right? When he said, at the center of your being, you have the answer, you know who you are, and you know what you are, what you want, right? And And when that is the case, of course, nothing else than coaching can be of great service. In fact, we have a chance, as he also said, to have people offer themselves the greatest gift they can, which is that of self-transformation. And I'd love to say that, of course, we need to understand sufficiently about the language the other person is telling us, but not be in the delusion that we have to understand them perfectly, because the job of coaches is not to understand the client and their problems. That would be delusional. It's impossible. Even the client cannot understand themselves, right? The job is different. The job of the coach is to help the client understand a bit more about themselves, about what they want to, who they want to be, and what they want to do, right? So let's not obsess about language too much, while at the same time, let's promote the accessibility of coaching across all languages around the world, one conversation at a time, and that's an endeavor I cannot thank and applaud ACM enough for embracing. I thank you all for your kind attention and look forward to the debate and your questions in a moment. Thanks and see you later.
Thank you, Jean. That was, that was a great movie. I've seen it possibly now the 7th or 8th time, but it never fails to, enlighten and touch. And as Carl Rogers said, help the person to help themselves is the, in a way, the theme you were talking about. So let me invite, Professor Debashish. So Debashish, over to you, please, and then we'll come back to questions and views later.
Okay, thank you, Bimal, and thank you, Ross and Francois Cousin. And I think I had come prepared to rest my voice because I'm not particularly in good shape voice-wise. So what I thought was showing you a film clip about a new design of our coaching center, but I would pull on as long as possible, and then maybe, if time permitting, we'll show you the clips. So the thing is that, I have never been a coach in the formal sense of the word. I've not even been a teacher. I've tried to be both. All I can say is that, my first encounter at the Harvard, or as we all said, I was on a Fulbright, and I was teaching a cohort of students, mid-career students at the Kennedy School, and there were some students from the business school, something on Gandhian leadership. And I saw a student who I knew was a student in my class. He didn't know I was teaching this class. And he was waiting for a bus that I was waiting for. And there was roughly 15 seconds for the bus to arrive, and buses usually arrive in that part of the world on time. Yet in those 15 seconds, he started looking at his watch several times. So I said, why were you so restless? He said, just that I can't wait being just with myself. I said, not even for 15 seconds. He said, yeah, not even for 15 seconds. I said, then you might wonder, if you can't have an appointment with yourself for 15 seconds, what kind of person you are likely to be when you're having an appointment with somebody else. So the question that was uppermost in my mind was the Western coaching methods through which I have gone. I've been through executive coaching several times across the world. And I found that the functions are largely clinical, sanitized, as was rightly said, of the emotional component, and high on cognition, low on compassion. This has been my experience. Of course, your experiences may differ, but I'm just talking about mine. Now, the person who originated this whole notion of coaching, the Western model of the predominance of thought and the emotions as a bunch of beasts that needs to be tamed because cognition was supreme, and that Plato's rational theory is breaking down. If you look at the current brain research, it is saying we have not 3 brains, but just 1 brain. Forget about limbic, and they have the same basic metric. Any other mammal would have evolved the same way as human beings would have evolved if they had been allowed the time to evolve this neocortical skill. So fundamentally, brain research, and most coaches don't do enough in terms of studying brain researches. The latest that comes to my frame of reference is that there are no 3 brains, there's just 1 brain. And the function of the brain is not to evolve from emotion to rationality. The function of the brain is to allocate resources like an investor allocates funds. at wherever those energies and resources are required. So if my emotional brain is craving for attention, it's because the brain has legitimately wants to channel that through the intelligence of emotions, resources of the body mind, so that our survival is ensured. That's primarily the function of the human brain. So the supremacy of cognition is coming under serious threat. It came once under threat with Daniel Goleman, emotional intelligence, but a lot of people foo-fooed Goleman's research as pop psychology and at their own cost, because the Indian model has always talked about Hridaya Vritti and Buddhi Vritti, the culture of emotions and the culture of rationality. And they said the culture of emotions was primary, culture of rationality was secondary. Just the reverse process, and not without reason. What we see is, in terms of the kind of failure of the humankind, we see failure of rationality. We don't see that the culture of emotions have reached a point where those nobler emotions have a say in decision-making of the world. Look at climate change, look at what's happening in the name of virus control. You'll see emotions that are at stake, and emotional culture is not part of our curriculum anyway, not even at Harvard, MIT, Stanford. Forgive me for being a little provocative, but this is what my job is. See, I'm not invested in coaching or academics, and I'll tell you the truth. So the Indian word guru that has been co-opted by most of the Western world and is seen as expertise, actually the word guru has three meanings, three cognate meanings. And you see, cultures differ. For every Indian word, there'll be multiple meanings. That's how we are. The word guru means a dispeller of darkness, somebody who takes me from darkness to light. The second meaning of the word in Sanskrit, guru, is eternal traveler, somebody who doesn't stop anywhere, moves on. There is no finishing line. The third meaning of the word guru is seer of the whole, somebody who sees the whole picture. All right. So if you look at the coaching and mentorship as paying attention or connection, as we heard before, to the whole person, then you need to be the whole person. You can't be highly cognitive and see if too much of an analyst. So the evolution of the coach's thinking is about transformation of our human experience. Knowledge is created through transformation of experience. Look at Krishna and Arjuna, the classic Indian text called the Bhagavad Gita, 700 verses of coaching, pure coaching conversation. Now, Krishna, that coach, is talking to the coachee, who's Arjuna, and the conversation is not about performance, not about paid by the hour with a timeline sort of thing, right? It is about potential. And the entire conversation is not about dissecting a problem, but about growth and actualization of potential. And that's the difference between transformative coaching and coaching for money, clinical coaching, right? I think that difference has to be kept in mind, because fundamentally you are talking about the whole person sitting here. And so if you look at the Western models, the high power distance is really bad for coaching. And see Hofstede's model that says high power distance, the power distance should be low because there has to be a sense of intimacy. Now, India has high power distance, but India has evolved the most advanced models of coaching. Krishna is God and Arjuna is just a normal human being. So you can imagine the high power distance, but there is also a deep connect between the human and the divine. The bovine, the human and the divine are connected because they come from the same spiritual source. And that translates as not hierarchies, but multi-archies. There has to be hierarchies between coach and the coachee. Without that hierarchy, the impact, if I do not believe that you have greater knowledge than I have, why will I come to you? And demolition of hierarchy, sanitization of the emotional component doesn't help me at all. And so it is not just about language, it's not about culture, it's about the absolutes, where the Western world has gone a little bit wrong. And I can tell you with absolute clarity that, we have been challenging that premise for a long time, but now research is supporting us. So coaching context, cultures do matter a lot, and generalizations would be very hazardous. However, I will generalize 3 sutras, coaching sutras that has helped me informally talk to a large number of people. I have 17 books. The 17th is just behind me. This is my sum total of what I've learned through coaching. First of all, nothing can be taught until it is learned. This is fundamental. Gita is a learner-centric, multimodal delivery of one message. At the very core of human identity is that timeless self. But this has to be delivered until the learner gets it. Until the learner gets it. So until you get it, your coaching is not over. So my credibility as a coach depends on how the learning has happened, not how much of coaching I've done per hour. Second sutra is you must teach what is near before you teach what is far. Krishna is teaching Arjuna how to deal with the mental battle before the battle is fought out there. So what is near is just as critical, far more critical, because what's near helps me contextualize what you're saying much better. But if you start giving me stuff that is far away, then I will not be able to see the context. Finally, the third element is successful coaches like Krishna have to be bifocal. They need to see what is near as well as see what is far. And I'm not going to say anything more. I'm going to tell you what I do in terms of my own coaching with my students. So I have a cup of tea. I'm drinking a cup of tea. And I tell them, look, what you see is a cup of tea is nothing but photons of light falling on a green leaf, turning it brown. So it's essentially drinking light. But you can't drink light directly, so you condense light in the form of a liquid. But you're not happy with the color of the liquid, so you put a drop of white fluid that a black cow eating green grass has produced. You call that milk. You stir the milk with the tea, it acquires a sexy brown complexion. And you're not happy with that either because you need the sap of the earth, which through a pump called sugar cane, and the crystallized version of the sap is called sugar cubes. You put it inside the cup and you stir the cup. What you're stirring is the entire cosmos. It's actually a cosmic conspiracy of the elements of the world, of our earth. Fire, water, air, ether, everything put together inside a cup of tea. Now, a cup of tea doesn't look like a cup of tea anymore. Functionally, it is still one. So the ability to take the mentee or the coachee gradually from the known to the unknown is not science. It's not a function of structure alone. It's a function of creativity, of innovation, the ability to see that there is a flexibility in the relationship between the coachee and the one coached. And that's why Krishna is a Krishna, that's why Arjuna is an Arjuna. Finally, I would like to say this and end with it. That Krishna and Arjuna are not two people out there in mythological past. They represent two dimensions of the human persona. One is called the reflective, the other is called the active. Krishna is the software, Arjuna is the hardware. Right? Without a Krishna, there is no Arjuna. Without reflection, there is no action. Conversely, without an Arjuna, there is no Krishna. Without an Aristotle, there is no Alexander. Without a Chanakya, there is no Chandragupta. So it's a relationship. Relationship not in terms of bodies, relationship not of just forms and functions, relationship of the spirit that India has always enshrined, that India has always taught the whole world, right? And so coaches have to be sanitized of their basic mental models as to why they are in this coaching business for. That's fundamental before you enter a culture and try and decode it. Thank you for listening to me. I still haven't shown my video because I think the audience listening in has a lot of questions, but we will show it if you permit and have the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Debasis. You've lived up to your promise of being provocative, which is nice. It's always good to sort of hear you with some, interesting thoughts, etc. But let me, there are a few questions and I have a couple, but, let me just, go to the panelists and see if they have any views. So let me, Ross, start with you. And you talked about connection. And of course, Debasis did come back in a different way around the connection later in his, dialogue. One of the questions I've got here is from Mr. Praveen Sinha about tone of voice. And he says that tone of voice is very important to humans. And in the context of coaching, I guess this question is coming, what would you advocate as some of the do's and don'ts? Ross?
Tone of voice is what you're saying. I think as a coach, you have to have an inquisitive tone rather than a lecturing tone or a telling tone, a tone that's inquisitive. And to me, you have an inquisitive mind because you're trying to find out all as much about that person as you can. And that's through questions. But the tone has to be that way. It's not an interrogation. It's just an inquisitive question. So tell me more, those types of things. So to me, that's the key, as well as probably using the feeling words. So rather than what do you think about that, how do you feel about that? Because that there again, that's taking him to the connection to feel, the emotional side, which enables the connection.
Great. Thanks, Ross. And maybe we'll come back to you with other questions in a minute. So there's another question specifically, Jean, for you from Jacques, which talks about, you had that word agility out there on one of your slides, and I think, he sort of picked that up. And I think the question is a very direct one, saying, how would you define agility in coaching and also across cultures? It seems to be a very broad question, but maybe you'd attempt it, Jean.
Yeah, so thanks for the question, right? A coach and a coaching conversation really kind of embody agility, right? Because both parties are enjoying not knowing or enjoying openness to different possibilities, are enjoying quick generation of ideas, and then also trial and error, right? There is comfort with trying and failing within reason and learning the lessons, right? And also making decision without all the variables, which is part of agility, right? For those 5 reasons, I guess the coachee role model agility in his or her life and particular corporate environment at a time where it needs it so much. I hope that helps.
Thank you, Jean. There's a question from Yogi, my old friend. I'm going to ask both Ross, you and Jean to answer that maybe in this thing. Actually, there are 2 questions from him, but let me take the first one. So he's saying, if a client wants to learn more about any of the cognitive biases that are limiting his or her thought process, any suggestions on coaching prompts, right? So the client's saying, I think I have some cognitive biases and I think that they're limiting my thought process. How would a coach sort of go about it? What kind of prompts could the coach, use to answer some of those aspects? Ross, maybe I can go with you first and then come to Jean.
I'd ask them what made them say that to me. Like, in other words, why did you bring that up? Give me an example of what makes you think that you have a bias. Otherwise, I'm just guessing. There again, and then you get something uncovered, and then we can discuss it and talk about it. May or may not be a bias. But the key is, it's the questioning. You just got to keep asking why. Whatever people say to you, there's a reason behind them saying it. I just need to find out what's driving that reason.
Right. Great. Thanks, Ross. Yeah, that's great, actually. Jean, anything to add?
Yeah, I fully resonate with what Ross was saying, right? But perhaps another thing we can experiment with, some way it works, sometimes it doesn't, is inviting the client to listen to what his heart or her heart is having as a message about the situation, right? Or the guts, right? The 3 brains that Dr. was talking about earlier on.
Okay. Yeah. Great. Okay. So, Prof, let me ask you. So, this is a very, very direct question. So, and I don't know whether you mentioned that you've not been a quote unquote a classical executive coach in that sense, but let me still ask you, Debasis. What if the coachee is kind of rigid and not able to accept certain things? I know this is a very classical question asked of coaches. Rajeshwari asked that. So, Debasis, would you like to answer that?
But he's not able. Would you accept that somebody is not able to accept your coaching? First of all, the acceptance starts from you. I think the fundamental to any relationship is acceptance. And I personally feel that this is the problem of too much of cognition and too little recognition. Why am I cognizing that somebody is not able to accept because he's freezing as I give some inputs? It simply means there's no connection. It's snapped somewhere. And usually the snapping happens at the level of trust. This is the core. How do I establish a trust that I'm able to understand even the fact that somebody is not ready to receive? We often have this with our own children. They stopped. My father used to advise me every time about something I would never listen to. So one day I turned around and said, why do you keep telling the same thing in the same way when you know for sure that I'm not going to obey you? And my father kept quiet for quite some time. He never raised that issue again. And that's for the first time I started listening to what you say. So the repertoire of tricks that you have as a coach is incomplete without the awareness behind how you're going to use those tricks. So if you're carrying a hammer all the time, you'll hammer everything on your way. So one of the repetitive tricks is to just keep quiet, accept the fact that somebody is not accepting you.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, thanks, Debasis. But what you're also saying is that I think maybe the coach himself or herself needs to be first aware of their reality before they,
Absolutely.
in a way, go down there. You put it very gently, but I think that's one of the things I take away from that statement you made.
You wouldn't call me a professor if I wasn't gentle. You call me a butcher. But anyway, that's my trade. Thank you.
It's a critical, very good comment.
Thank you.
Please, Ross, go ahead. Please, your comment. Please go ahead.
No, I'm just saying it's critical. You must know yourself before you can start to help others. Because if you're not capable of helping yourself and leading yourself, how can you help and lead others to where they need to be going?
Yeah, yeah. So, Ross, and this is, I'm coming to this. I think somebody's asked a question, Mr. Devendra, about, the difference between connecting and engaging. And I'm not sure whether that's just a semantic difference he's asking about, or does he mean something else? But he's basically saying, how do you differentiate engaging from connecting? And honestly, I don't fully appreciate the question, but maybe you have a different take on it.
It's an interesting question. Look, there probably isn't, but at the same time, I guess I just say connecting because to me, connecting's deeper. Engaging can be surface. And I think some of the processes and models have engaging. That's why I go to connecting, because to me, it's deeper in my mind. It may not be in someone else's, but the key is it's connecting, not just engaging, but connecting heart to heart, really, soul to soul.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thanks. So there's a question specifically about ICF competencies, and I'm going to ask Jean, but because he's been in a couple of ICF roles over many years. But Jean, depending, because you're not, because there's a comment more on the ICF competencies, you can choose whichever way you want to answer or not answer that question, right? So the question is, considering the cultural impact on coaching, how do you look at the ICF competencies and the need to bring in cultural context to them?
Yeah. So thanks for the question. So ICF has updated their core competencies with more than 1,700 coaches around the world being involved in the huge work. It took 2 years, right? And simplified it. And I invite everyone to check through Google, right? ICF core competencies. There are 8 of them, lucky number. And you will see that there is a lot of emphasis in the new core competencies about coaching mindset, right? And also on evoking awareness and coaching the whole person of the client, right? Like Ross was saying, all brains, heart and soul, and that goes through any culture and any context, in fact, right? What is missing in our conversation so far, I think, which is maybe important to bring up, is the difference between a mentor and a coach, right? It's very different. In the movie Ray, you saw the lady as a pure coach, right? If she had chosen mentoring, then she would have held the hand of the little boy, gave him advice, told him from her great experience what he needed to know and what he needed to do, right, to process. And there is a role, an important role in both functions, right? My recommendation is they don't intersect. When we mentor, we mentor, right? When we coach, we coach. And the most powerful posture of the coach, and it resonates with what Dr. was saying before, right? Nothing can be taught until it is learned. The most powerful coach posture is the learner of the coachee, which invites the coachee to become the teacher of the solution that he can find or she can find within themselves, their whole selves, to the problem they are reflecting about, right? So the exact opposite, the most powerful posture of the coach is the exact opposite of the teacher. It's inviting the coachee to be the teacher, right? So you can see totally different from a mentor, right? Yeah, I thought it's important clarification in the discussion.
Thank you for that. So there is a question about educational institutions that's been asked of Professor Debasis, but I'm not going to pick that up. That's not part of this this thing and we have limited time. But I think there is a specific practical question about organizational coaching from Yogi, and I think he's basically asking that should coaching be voluntary or triggered by companies to stimulate change behavior, and specifically in context of leaders. So I'm going to go to each one of you. So maybe Jean, you first, and then Ross, and then this thing. So basically the question is around saying, should it be completely voluntary, or should companies actually almost quote unquote force it on leaders, if you want to use that strong word? So Jean,
so for me,
Ross, and then I can go.
Yeah. So for me, the answer is simple. It should be voluntary. Forcing someone to kind of look deep within themselves, confront their insecurities, discover more about who they are, who they can be, and working the way, that does not make sense. If someone refuses to work on themselves, then perhaps the company should question, is that person so locked in their arrogance, therefore their big insecurity, is an asset or a liability for the company going forward?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you, Jean. Ross, what's your take?
You unmute, please. You have to unmute, Ross.
I've done it again. That's right. No, now we're back. Yeah, thanks for that. No, I'm just saying I agree with what you're saying there, and it sometimes companies mandate it as part of a development process, okay, where everyone gets given the connection with the coach. The key back there is, do they want to be coached or not? And if they don't want to be coached, what's the reason? And I suspect long term it's a short career move, because there's a reason behind it. As Jean-Francois said, it's like either you're arrogant, you don't need to be coached, or you're so insecure in other ways that you feel as though it'll open up too many problems. So look, there's a lot of different reasons. And I must admit, over the years, most people like to be coached, but in that, having said that, there's still a lot of challenges. And when it's challenged, there's always a behavioural issue behind it, like a deep-rooted behavioural issue, not something that's just a slight problem, something that's deep-rooted. So the key is to be finding that out.
Yeah, thanks, Ross. Okay, there's a follow-up question, Debasis. So I'm going to ask you that follow-up question, to this question. Actually, Ashish actually was asking that, how does a person actually get to know whether they really need a coach or not? How do they become aware, if you will? So Debasis, you've taught a lot of students. So
well, does my view really matter? But I will still say it. See, the whole coaching thing is evolving like the quality movement. The moment you have a quality department, that's the end of quality. And you see, the question is, coaching is a spontaneous process. It's an evolving process. And see, at the highest level of leadership, coaching becomes as like breathing. You cannot be a leader without the elements of coaching within your repertoire of capabilities or competences. And so what I'm saying is that if who needs coaching? It's something like this. If you have an organized version of the coaching industry, which is fair, which is nothing wrong with it. But if the knowledge is chasing the student is going to run away. If the student is chasing knowledge, I think that works much better. I think you must have a skill set and capabilities out there on display, and you must allow the coaches to choose whether they want it or not, when they want it, how they want it. And this flexibility is very critical for survival of the coaching industry. The more rigor you bring and less relevant it becomes, however, rigor is critical, you can't throw away. So that fine balance has to be struck based on what kind of organization this is, what is the criticality of that input, who's going to coach whom. Is the coach qualified enough to do the job that he's supposed to do, or is it managed in a certain hierarchy of talent, a nexus between people who know each other? Then it destroys, like every beautiful thing. When you allow it to be organized the wrong way, it gets destroyed. Coaching will be destroyed. It'll become just a trade between, what I know and what you don't know, and all of that stuff. Thank you. Appreciate your time.
I'm very mindful of time, and in the interest, I know some of the panelists told me that they had questions as well, but we have run out of time, and people are on a short notice in some cases. So let me thank all the panelists, and thanks for your views and insights. I'm sure I see a lot of comments here about the fact that people have taken back some great stuff from this thing. And let me hand it over to Professor Dr. VP Singh, actually, who's the chairman of ACN, for closing address. Dr. Singh, please.
Thank you, Vimal. Thank you. That was an outstanding session. Extremely insightful, I must say. Very stimulating, very engaging. I think it was a very rich fare of takeaways for all of us. And I compliment all panelists, Jean-Francois, Ross, Professor Chatterjee, as well as you, Vimal, for steering this session so commendably. Absolutely brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I don't wish to kind of summarize the discussion, but I wanted to highlight what I took away from this session. And some of the things which I took away as a student is what Ross was saying, is that rather than leaning on model, probably one should lean on connections. That was something very powerful I believe he was talking about. Jean-Francois was talking about catalyst of liberation as a coaching process. And that was something extremely powerful and relevant. And the film excerpt which he showed around this film Ray was absolutely brilliant, absolutely outstanding. Professor Chatterjee, as usual, was provocative, stimulating, but I guess there were a lot of things every one of us wanted to hear from him. Especially, he was probably hinting is a Gurukul model of coaching. Probably next time we will have an opportunity to hear from you, Professor Debasis, about Gurukul model. And also, offline we were discussing this culturally congruent classroom. That is something probably we all will look forward to. But you made a lot of powerful statements, you know, and supremacy of cognition versus emotion, culture of emotion versus rationality, teaching what is near is something I found was extremely vital and relevant for all of us at Asia Coaching Network. Your examples were peerless, absolutely wonderful. And what I took, one of the comment was, coaching is like breathing, you know, a leader and coach, it has to be something like breathing. Absolutely wonderful session. And I compliment all four of you for doing a wonderful job. And let me take a minute to also highlight at this stage that Asia Coaching Network, this is an inclusive community of like-minded and like-hearted coaches, mentors, human capability builders who are guided by primarily two credos. Number one, that let human and individual and organizational capability flourish and blossom organically, naturally, free from limitations of language or a prescribed language. And we believe that language is a vehicle. It is a carrier, it is not a destination. And that came out so powerfully when all of you, as a matter of fact, you are highlighting that part. Secondly, we also believe that culture has to be, coaching has to be kind of a, set in the context of culture. And Professor Debasis was so evocative in that. Let cultural attributes and ambience in which this coaching intervention is flourishing find its rightful place, rightful space in this coaching journey. This is what came out from this session. At the end, we welcome all who are present here. We thank all who have decided to be part of this journey and decided to be our co-travelers. We pray and hope that this tribe proliferates in time. Thank you very much, all of you. Extremely grateful, extremely obliged. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Debasis Chatterjee, Francois Cousin, Ross Swan, and Bimal Raj to have shared your experience, knowledge, and wisdom. I think there are so many takeaways, numerous of them, and I feel really greedy to keep listening to all of you. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate you being here. Don't forget to visit our website, which is www.asiacoachingnetwork.com, and register for membership at the website. We really like feedback. So don't forget to write to us at info@asiacoachingnetwork.com. We would like to hear what you want to say about our session and looking forward from here. Thanks once again for joining us today, and we will see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.